Hey, ghoul friends, it's me, Adrian or Ayden. Either way, you are still listening to Susto, the podcast of ooky, spooky, scary stories. Y'all, oh my god, there has been a few changes. And if you follow the Instagram, you're seeing a little bit. If you don't, you might have noticed it. I've tried to make these changes like as seamless as possible. And yeah, so Susto now is, by the way, some big news updates. Susto now is a completely independent podcast. I am producing this, distributing it 100% on my own. So I'm probably going to be putting out like a link or something, like a donation button. If you all can donate to me, it actually does cost money to put podcasts on. Like I have to pay for a hosting service where all of the audio lives so that it can be distributed to wherever you're listening to your podcast on, which brings me to my next update is that Susto is now available on Spotify. I'm so excited about that because I love Spotify. I listen to all my music on Spotify. I am a big Apple person and I listen to most of my podcasts on Apple, but I do also use Spotify and I have a lot of friends that use Spotify for podcasts as well. So if you follow the Instagram at Susto Podcast, then you definitely saw the post about that. So yeah, make sure that you're following the Instagram because in between shows, if something changes and it's really important or it's really big, I'm going to put it on the Instagram. So if you didn't know, now you know. Share that information with your Spotify friends. And the podcast is also going to be available on the majority of podcast platforms. So this new place that I'm using to host my podcast is called Buzzsprout, and they automatically put out the podcast onto like multiple different platforms. So I think it's on like iHeartRadio. I think it's on Google Play. I think it's like on a bunch of like other smaller ones or maybe like less known podcast platforms. But yeah, Spotify is like another big one that I've been wanting to get on and I'm finally on there. So super excited about that. What else is new? Halloween season is coming up. I know. I'm so excited for Halloween season. It's my favorite time of year. My apartment is already decorated. We put up the decorations like 2 weeks ago. We are definitely on it for Halloween. So I do have some things that I'm planning. I'm not going to tell you what the specific ideas are because I don't want to like get your hopes up and like it doesn't happen, even though I'm doing that right now anyway. So I want to do like a Halloween series because there's going to be 3 different times that I should be posting an episode in October. So I definitely want to take advantage of that, especially because it's our fucking season, y'all. It is Halloween season. So there are some things that I'm planning that I'm trying to get done. I'm literally working on that right now. So you're just going to have to follow the Susto Instagram at Susto Podcast so that you can look out for any updates. Cause yeah, I'm trying to plan some really cool things for you all. So that being said, we'll jump into today's episode. So I actually do have a story that someone emailed to me. So I'm going to open that up and I'm going to read that to you right now. Okay. So this story is from Demi. And I'm just going to get into it. So the email, I'm going to read the whole email. This is the first time I'm reading it too. So like I wanted to get a genuine reaction. So it says, okay, I don't know how exactly where to start. Here goes. I met my now husband in December of 2012. On June 30th, 2013, we experienced a loss in his family. He lost his cousin that he spent every single day with, that he considered a brother. My husband took it extremely hard because he died in his arms. Oh my God. This was a loss so traumatic that the upcoming weeks/months to follow were very difficult for us. Not necessarily our love for one another, but more so he needed to heal and he was in a dark place because of his loss. At the time, he would work and I stayed home. Every morning I would get up and get him out the door. When everyone was gone, I would go back to sleep. I wouldn't sleep at night because I was so afraid of the dark. Here's why. Oh, I'm already scared. It says, every time I would go back to sleep, I would experience sleep paralysis. But during that time, I would hear our front door creak open and slam shut. Oh, okay. It says, following that, I would hear our bedroom door do the same. You kind of get used to the noise and recognize it. Or is that just me? No, I feel like the longer you kind of like let a noise happen wherever you're living or like you ignore something, you just kind of like, you just ignore it, right? I guess you can get used to it. It depends on like how extreme this is, but I don't know. This sounds like I wouldn't get used to that. It's too scary to me. She continues. Next, I'd hear and feel someone sit at the edge of our bed and just rocking back and forth. Oh, okay. No. It says, every time I would try to look, I could only see an outline of a black shadow, like 6 feet tall in a black trench coat and a black hat covering him from head to toe. Oh my God, no. Oh, I just got chills. It says, and for what felt like forever, he would just rock while I struggled to move and my screams always sounded muffled. After a while, he would get up and just stand in the corner of our bedroom facing me. And then a small boy, pale looking, with long hair and black eyes, would crawl on all fours from under our bed onto my body. No. Oh, I hate this so much. Oh my God. It says, I would wake up with scratches on my arms and thighs all the time. He would just lay on me and eventually I would give up and just doze off. So I was always exhausted. No, hell no. This says, this happened to me at least 2 to 3 times a week. Sometimes just the man, sometimes just the boy, most times both. You know that I'm a devout Catholic, so one day I told my parents I was experiencing nightmares and they gave me holy water to bless my bedroom. Eventually they stopped. To this day, I don't sleep on a frame. I need to have my spring and mattress on the floor. I never really looked into the reasoning behind why it would happen. I just believe it was because of how dark that time in our life was. Anyways, thanks for reading. Smiley face emoji. Girl, oh my God. Oh, that is so ugly. I'm so mad that I decided to do this right now because I'm in my apartment alone. And of course, I had to read this. Oh my God, Demi, that was such a good story. Y'all, oh my God. I'm just thinking about it. I hate this so much. But yeah, I think after the last episode is when Demi messaged me and said that they had a story to tell me, because in the last episode we mentioned sleep paralysis. So if you haven't heard that episode, go back and listen to it. We mentioned it pretty briefly, and it's the episode about demons with my friend who is a spiritual healer, medium, and a badass bruja, Alejandra Sanchez. And so I think that's why Demi sent me this email. And yeah, we mentioned that demons can come into your life when you're in a dark time or when you're having a harder time, and it kind of leaves you weaker or vulnerable. And so, it could very well be that. And, maybe that you're in a better place, Demi, now you won't experience those things, but I can definitely understand the idea of no, there's no space between the bed and the floor, because I would be traumatized. But that's great that your parents gave you that holy water. They came in clutch. Girl, I would suggest getting a crystal quartz, get a little bit of sage, just, yes, cleanse your space, because that was terrifying. I'm not going to be over that story for a long time. That was disgusting. I hated it, but in the best way. I loved it. It was so good. Y'all, that is prime example of sharing your story. Also, if you have pictures or videos, or if you happen to catch an EVP, which is an electronic voice phenomenon, which is when you may have captured a spirit's voice, send any of those. It doesn't have to be just a story. Send any of that to me. If I can't share it on the podcast and it's a visual thing, I will share it on the Instagram at Susto Podcast. So, oh my God, that was too much. Okay. Now we're going to go ahead and jump into the story. Today's episode, it's the entire story. It's pretty heavy. As you've seen from the title, this is about the murder of Mark Kilroy. He's a spring breaker that was vacationing here in the Rio Grande Valley, and he was abducted and murdered. And this is definitely on the beat of true crime, but it still involves the occult. And so that's why I wanted to share the story, because it's still, it's scary to think about regardless, but that level of occult and Satanism or aspects of Satanism is a little bit more spooky and more in line with the show. So I'm going to put in the description box what time period you should skip, because there's a short spot in the story that gets pretty graphic. And so definitely this is a kind of a warning for you all. If you have, some children in the car or wherever you're listening, or if you just don't want to hear that, which I completely understand. It was a little hard for me to tell. Yeah. So, like I said, this is based on a true story, and it happened here in the Rio Grande Valley in our neck of the woods. And so I thought it'd be really interesting to tell. Like I said, I've been wanting to tell this story for a while, but I kind of went back and forth how do I tell this the right way? Is there a right way to tell it? And I hope that I did it with as much tact as possible. And so, yeah, I hope you'll enjoy. As always, if you have your own story that you want me to share on the show, you can do so by leaving a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and leave your story in the review, or you can email it to sustopodcast@gmail.com. Again, please look at the description box if you want to skip past the really graphic parts, and I'll see you after the show. Bye. On March 10th, 1989, Mark Kilroy's childhood friend Bradley Moore finished exams early at Texas A&M University and headed to Austin to pick him up. Both then headed to Santa Fe to pick up 2 other friends, Bill Huddleston and Brent Martin, before heading to South Padre Island for spring break. After a foggy 9-hour drive to South Texas, They arrived to South Padre Island shortly before midnight. They checked in at the Sheraton hotels and resorts the next morning before heading to the beach. When they first arrived at South Padre Island, there was a few people because it was only the first weekend out of a 5-week spring break season. But thousands of students from the entire US were beginning to arrive as the weekend progressed. Kilroy and Moore made phone calls to their parents that day. Later that evening, they met a group of female students from Purdue University and partied until the next morning. The following morning, Kilroy and his new friends went to the beach and suntanned before lunch. After lunch, they went to the beach area behind their hotel for the daily Miss Tan Line contest. Once the event was over that afternoon, Kilroy headed to the hotel for a quick nap before planning their trip to Mexico. They left South Padre Island that evening and stopped for dinner at a fast food drive-in in Port Isabel, where they met a group of female students from the University of Kansas who were also planning to party in Mexico. The women then followed Moore's car from Port Isabel to Brownsville and parked their cars close to the Gateway International Bridge before crossing the US-Mexico border by foot. Kilroy's friends and the Kansas women spent most of their evening at Sgt. Pepper's nightclub in Matamoros before the groups went their separate ways. Kilroy and his friends then returned to South Padre Island early next morning. On March 13th, Kilroy and his friends attended another Miss Tan Line contest behind the hotel, and later in the evening, Kilroy met with one of his former frat brothers at a condo party. At around 10:30 p.m., Kilroy and his friends headed back to Matamoros. They parked and crossed the border by foot again. That night, Matamoros was flooded with 15,000 spring breakers from the US on the city's main tourist street, Álvaro Obregón. The sidewalks, street, and nightclubs were packed with foreign tourists looking to enjoy cheap alcohol and enjoy Mexico's lax drinking laws. When they got to Matamoros, Kilroy and his friends decided to go to the bar with the shortest line. They ended up at Los Sombreros, a bar with rock music and bright neon lights. After a few drinks, Kilroy and his friends left Los Sombreros and wandered to London Pub. This bar was louder and wilder than Los Sombreros, and Kilroy and his friends stood at the bar while other tourists threw beer from the balcony. Kilroy met with a few women at the bar and was not seen by his friends for a while. Around 2 a.m., Huddleston suggested the group head back to South Padre Island. As his friends stepped out of the London pub, they saw Kilroy leaning against a car and talking to a woman from the Miss Tan Line contest. Across Álvaro Obregón Street, thousands of tourists were leaving the bars and heading to Brownsville, but others moved in different directions. The large crowd of people made it difficult for Kilroy and his friends to walk across the border, uninterrupted and in a group. Moore and Martin separated from the group and walked to Garcia's, a popular restaurant store close to the border. Kilroy stopped at the steps of a house to say goodbye to the woman from Miss Tan Line. He then waited for Huddleston to walk towards him, who ran to a nearby alley to urinate while Kilroy waited for him. By the time Huddleston came out and caught up to the other two near Garcia's, Kilroy had vanished. His friends searched for him for hours, even after the establishments had closed and the streets had cleared at around 4:30 a.m. They then crossed the border, thinking Kilroy may have crossed to Brownsville and was perhaps waiting near their car. His friends did not find him near their car and waited a few minutes in Brownsville before returning to South Padre Island. They thought that Kilroy probably left to the hotel with someone else. They woke up the next day at the hotel and Kilroy's whereabouts were still unknown. His friends then contacted the police to report him missing. As Kilroy stood on the street, he was lured by a man parked inside a red truck who asked him if he needed a ride. As he got close to the vehicle, Kilroy was grabbed by two men, Serafín Hernández Garcia and Mario Fabio Ponce Torres, and wrestled inside the truck. Because of his size and athletic strength, Kilroy was able to break loose about 2 blocks down the road after one of the gangsters stopped for a few moments to catch his breath. Kilroy ran from the truck but was eventually intercepted by another vehicle driven by the gangsters' allies and taken at gunpoint. He was then subdued and handcuffed in the back of the second car. The gangsters drove Kilroy through the back streets of the city and past an industrial area. The number of bars and vendor stands in the streets began to thin out as they drove Kilroy through a highway in the city's outskirts. The gangsters then turned onto a dirt road that stretched between 2 cornfields. When they got to the private ranch known as Santa Elena, they left Kilroy inside the car overnight. Shortly after dawn, the ranch's caretaker went to see Kilroy and fed him bread, eggs, and water. About 12 hours after Kilroy was kidnapped, Adolfo Constanzo and his men came to see him. They wrapped his face and mouth with duct tape and walked him through a field to a storage cabin with his hands still tied around his back. Throughout the night, Kilroy was tortured and sodomized. He was then led out to the field, and Constanzo killed him by chopping the back of his neck and head with a machete. His brain was then boiled in an African metal pot that Constanzo used to stew human and animal remains. Kilroy's legs were chopped off above his knees to facilitate his burial. A wire was inserted in his spinal cord to pull the bones out once the body decomposed. The cult members then dug a hole on the ground and buried Kilroy's corpse. Kilroy's murderer, Adolfo Constanzo, was a Cuban-American who was born in Miami, Florida in 1962. His father died when he was an infant, so his mother relocated to Puerto Rico with him, where she remarried. They returned to Florida in 1972, and his stepfather died soon afterwards, leaving a large inheritance behind. His mother married again, this time with a man who was involved in drug trafficking and the occult. His stepfather taught him a philosophy that Constanzo carried for the rest of his life. He told him that he should let non-believers kill themselves with drugs while he could profit from their foolishness. Around the same time, Constanzo's mother believed that her son had psychic abilities. She introduced him to Palo Mayombe, an Afro-Caribbean religion that involves animal sacrifice. He was also introduced to Santeria when he was younger. He started as a palero, someone who practices Palo Mayombe, and eventually reached the status of high priest or padrino. In 1984, he moved to Mexico City to start his life as a tarot card reader and eventually developed a cult following. His psychic talent, charisma, and physical attractiveness granted him the opportunity to mingle with Mexico City's upper class. His reputation for predicting the future and offering ritual cleansing became popular with some drug dealers, musicians, and police officers. The other cult leader was Sara Aldrete, an honor student and cheerleader at Texas Southmost College. She was the girlfriend of Gilberto Sosa, a drug dealer linked to the Hernandez clan to which Constanzo wanted an introduction. In 1987, she met Constanzo and eventually became the cult's main recruiter. Investigators believe that Aldrete's physical attractiveness and charm helped her lure men to join the cult or to set them up to be abducted and killed. She recruited people by first showing them the 1987 thriller film, The Believers, which was about a New York City-based cult that practiced human sacrifice for money and influence. Constanzo's members were forced to see the film again and again in order to indoctrinate them to the necessity of human sacrifice. Students and teachers at her college in Brownsville recalled her as a friendly and studious physical education student who showed no signs of abnormal behavior or involvement with a religious cult. Across the border in Matamoros, however, Aldrete was involved in drug smuggling operations and in cult activities. Investigators believed that her proximity to the US-Mexico border allowed Aldrete to keep her two lives separate for years. The ranch where Kilroy was murdered in Matamoros, Santa Elena, was owned by Brigido Hernandez. He was not a follower of Constanzo and was not charged with any crimes in the US or Mexico. The sudden death of Saul Hernandez in a shooting prompted his family, including Elio and his brothers Serafin Sr. and Ovidio, to grow closer to rituals and eventually become members of Constanzo's cult. Elio reportedly offered Constanzo half of his family's drug proceeds in exchange for his criminal contacts and supernatural protection for his family. On April 1st, 1989, Mexican state authorities were stationed at a routine checkpoint near Santa Elena when they saw a vehicle that ran through the checkpoint without stopping. The vehicle had crossed the international border from Texas and sped through Mexican Federal Highway 2, which connects Matamoros and Reynosa, Tamaulipas. The man driving the vehicle was Serafin, who had kidnapped Kilroy weeks earlier. Instead of turning on their police sirens, the police decided to follow the truck using an unmarked vehicle. They were then led to the ranch and pulled off at a distance. After about 30 minutes, Serafin took off from the ranch and headed back to the city. The officers decided to make their move back to the ranch. In a quick search, the police discovered cult paraphernalia. Instead of arresting Serafin, the police decided to continue gathering more evidence of the suspected criminal activities at the ranch and the organized crime members involved with the Hernandez family. They used informants in Matamoros to inquire on family activities at Santa Elena in order to make a series of crucial arrests. On April 9th, they returned with several other policemen and arrested Serafin, his uncle Elio, and multiple cult members. While in custody, it's said the detainees were very relaxed. They were sent to prison while the police interrogated a caretaker at the ranch. This person revealed to the police that the ranch had frequent visitors from Serafin's criminal group. The ranch's caretaker identified Kilroy through a photograph and stated that he saw him at the ranch. "Yeah," the caretaker told the police, "I saw him," and then pointed at the shack on the ranch. When the police interrogated Serafin separately, he confessed to aiding in Kilroy's murder and that other people were killed over the course of several months at Santa Elena. Serafin then identified Constanzo and Aldrete as the heads of the group. He said that Constanzo had ordered the slayings as part of a sacrificial ritual. Constanzo believed that by sacrificing his victims, those doing the sacrifice were ensured strength, abundance, and immunity from law enforcement and injury. Specifically, he said that Kilroy was chosen at random because Constanzo had ordered his men to find a gringo to sacrifice, which is a white Anglo male. He said that Kilroy was killed by Constanzo with a machete blow and that his body was buried at the ranch. Serafin agreed to take the police to the exact spot where Kilroy was buried, which was marked by a wire piece coming out of the dirt. He stated that the wire was attached to Kilroy's spinal cord so they could be able to pull out the bones and wear them as necklaces after the body decomposed. After Kilroy was confirmed dead, the media framed the drug group and their religious practices as Satanist. For the most part, the US media gave little mention to the drug-related violence that was widespread in northern Mexico, thus failing to provide a wider picture of what happened at Matamoros. Reports concluded that because human body parts were found inside a large metal pot, the group practiced cannibalism. Some journalists made the error of attributing cannibalism with a common assumption of Satanist groups sacrificing and eating human remains. Other writers, however, stated that Constanzo worshipped Kadiempembe, the devil in Palomayombe. In addition, some occult writers believed that the nature of Kilroy's murder, which included mutilation and clandestine burial, were part of occult tradition. When media coverage and allegations of Constanzo's affinity towards Satanism died down, several Afro-Caribbean scholars stated that Constanzo's actions were fueled by his personal conviction and psychopathic involvement with Palomayombe. They argued that Constanzo used Palomayombe for his own financial, illicit, and psychological needs by convincing his cult members to help further his drug trafficking operations. Through human sacrifice, Constanzo promised his members that they were protected from the law. Other Afro-Caribbean scholars alleged that Constanzo murdered Kilroy because he truly believed it was a requirement in his distorted view of Palomayombe. The Mexico City Police Department noticed that the Matamoros killings were similar to murders carried out in Mexico City between 1987 and 1989. After consulting local witchcraft practitioners and sorcerers, the police heard that Constanzo was probably hiding in Cuauhtemoc, one of the city's boroughs. The police department sent 16 officers to search the area. At a supermarket, they interrogated a shoemaker who claimed to have seen a woman who matched Aldrete's description. The police then spotted a man at the supermarket who was attempting to buy large amounts of groceries with US dollars. By the end of the week, the police concluded that the man was De Leon and that he was buying groceries for Constanzo. On May 6, 1989, police surrounded the building and waited for traffic to subside before raiding the premises. However, a black vehicle pulled up in front of the apartment complex and the police walked over to investigate. Constanzo noticed the police from the window of his apartment and opened fire at the officers who were at ground level. Constanzo threw golden coins and paper money from the window and burned some of his money on a stove. Constanzo eventually ran out of ammunition and began to lose his patience. After about 45 minutes, worried about his imminent capture, Constanzo ordered De Leon to kill him and Quintana Rodriguez. De Leon hesitated at the beginning, but Constanzo hit him in the face and told him that he would suffer in hell if he did not do as he commanded. Constanzo then hugged Quintana Rodriguez and De Leon stood in front of them before he opened fire and killed the two with a machine gun inside a closet. When the police climbed up the stairs and made it to Constanzo's smoke-filled apartment, Aldrete ran from the door screaming that Constanzo was dead. De Leon later confessed that Constanzo had lost his mind and was saying that everything was lost and that no one was going to have his money when the police raid forced him to barricade himself in his apartment. He also stated that he participated in Kilroy's murder and in other killings at Santa Elena, but both agreed that Constanzo did most of the killings himself. Aldrete denied participation in the killings and stated that she was unaware of them until she saw the victims on national television. She said that she was not an official member of the cult and was barely going through the initiation. In addition, she stated she was held prisoner during Constanzo's hiding in Mexico City. On May 3, 1994, Sara Aldrete was sentenced to 62 years in prison. Cult members Elio Hernandez, Serafin Jr. Hernandez, Sergio Martinez Salinas, and David Serna Valdez received 67 years each. The charges were multiple homicide, possession of narcotics, involvement in organized crime, police impersonation, illegal body desecration, illegal possession of firearms, and illegal possession of weapons exclusive to the Mexican Armed Forces. As of 2009, only 2 suspects remain at large, Ovidio Hernandez and Mario Fabio Ponce Torres. On the 20th anniversary of their son's murder, Kilroy's parents visited the Rio Grande Valley and Matamoros to thank the people who had supported them in their search for their son. In an interview, Kilroy's father stated that people were supportive. He said that it was easier to overcome their son's death because of the support they received. Kilroy's mother said she received a cross from a Brownsville woman when she was searching for her son in 1989. "It's a reminder every time that I know that the Lord was involved in everything," she said, while she touched and showed the cross around her neck. Y'all, thank you so much for sticking with me through that one. I know this one was a lot heavier than things that I've done in the past. One, like I said, it's something that happened. It's a true event. And 2, the content was just like kind of really, really heavy. I had wanted to do this episode before, but I was like, let me wait. Let me think about it. Let me think about how I can do this with the most like tact, I guess. As far as it goes for context for this episode, I actually wanted to look a little bit deeper into that religion that Adolfo Constanzo was said to be involved in. So as you all heard, that religion is called Palo Mayombe, and I found a website pretty quickly. I mean, there's a lot of information about it online, and I actually didn't know about this because this is apparently, from what I'm reading, related to Santeria, and I think a lot of us know what Santeria is, or it's a little bit more mainstream. And I think I know why, because I've always known that there's kind of like, I mean, to anything, you know, there's a lighter side to things and there's a darker side to things. And apparently Palo Mayombe is the darker side of Santeria. And as like, again, this is from what I'm reading and how I'm interpreting this, but like as like a subsect of Santeria, it's like its own religion, and it's called either Palo or Palo Mayombe. So I'm just going to read from this website that I found here. By the way, the entire story, I put that entire story together from Wikipedia. If you just search Mark Kilroy, the Wikipedia page pops up and it has the entire story. There's actually a lot of stuff that I left out because it's going to be super, super long. But if you want to, you can look up that page and read everything on there, because like I said, there's a lot of stuff that I didn't put in my telling of the story, but it's still a lot of really interesting stuff if you want to go ahead and look it up. So let me go ahead and read from this page now. So it says, Palo Mayombe originated from the African Congo and is said to be the world's most powerful and feared form of black magic. In Santeria religion, there exists a dark side called Palo Mayombe. Individuals who practice this dark aspect are called palero. Palo Mayombe has a very long history. This magic was transported to the Caribbean during Spanish slave trade to Cuba and Puerto Rico in the 1500s. The influence of Palo Mayombe can be found in Central America, Brazil, and Mexico. Palo Mayombe in Brazil is Quimbanda. Quimbanda is a mixture of traditional Congo indigenous in India and Latin American spiritualism. The differences between Palo Mayombe and Santeria is the religion of Santeria uses the forces of light, and the members of Palo Mayombe use the forces of darkness to achieve their goals and magic spells. Palero practiced extremely strong and powerful black magic. Many members of Santeria avoid being associated with Palo Mayombe. Palo Mayombe has its own priesthood and set of rules and regulations. Rules and regulations will vary according to the Palo Mayombe house to which an individual has been initiated into. Palo was integrated as part of the Santeria religion. It is an entirely different world when having an experience outside of the Latin American spiritualism. There are several famous Balero priests as well as secret societies dedicated to the Palo Mayombe. Ugh, that sounds really interesting. It's a little scary to me, but it's also very interesting. Baleros do not advertise their powers and will only perform spiritual work for an individual by referral. Balero priests' power is so strong that they can take a man of obscure origin and turn him into a very powerful world figure in a relatively short period of time. Oh shit, maybe I should hit them up. No, I'm kidding. I wouldn't do that. That's too scary for me. Many political leaders have been linked to an involvement with the practice of Palo Mayombe in order to keep them in power and control over the people. It is believed that a Balero can also bring death unto an individual within 24 hours. Balero can make and break you by saying just a few incantations and by performing a few minor rituals. Oh my god. If there's anyone out there that hears this and practices Palo Mayombe, please, I'm trying to do this with the utmost respect. If I'm giving away your secrets, I'm sorry, tell me and I'll take this down. But I'm like, this is on the internet. It's a very easy search to find. So, but wow, these sound like very powerful people that practice this. But I guess it's also like a lot of things, my belief, I guess, is that like things only have as much power as you give them. The lack of understanding and ignorance has always brought fear to people. In many cases, this ignorance has brought extinction to entire races of people and cultures. Palo Mayombe is a very fascinating and exciting aspect of Santeria, and it should be not taken lightly or ignored. I am thankful to have had the opportunity to have become a part of an ancient form of magic. With great honor and pride, I salute my family and ahijados in Palo Mayombe. Thank you all so much for tuning into the episode. Like I said in the beginning, lots of changes happening. There are still a lot of ideas that I have that I want to do. And yeah, I really am so grateful for your support. And as always, make sure that you leave a 5-star review. If you have a story you want to share, put it in the review. You can also email it to sustopodcast@gmail.com. Share this podcast with your friends, please. I know that there are a lot of spooky people out there that are into these same things. And please follow the Instagram for any and all updates on the show. That is at Susto Podcast on Instagram, because there are going to be some changes happening. So, or not changes, but there's going to be some new stuff happening. And I want to make sure that you all are right there with me and that you have the 411 right away. So yeah, I really hope that I did this story justice, and I really hope that I did it with as much tact as possible. I hope that you all enjoyed it, and don't follow strangers. Okay. I really mean that. Be careful out there. Love you all. Bye.